to the School of Content podcast with me, Clint Malley, where we help you get more customers online without having paid advertising, without having to use any paid ads. And I am so excited to introduce my guest today. We're going to be talking about course creation. We're going to be talking about animation. We're going to be talking about videos and using it to be able to grow your business organically, using it to reach more people, and to hopefully just have a bigger impact on the world through your content. My guest today is Rued Riis. He's an online teacher helping educators turn knowledge into video. He believes in fun learning and that all teachers must have the ambition to entertain. Rued, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
So to give you some context, listeners, watchers, on how I first discovered Rued, I was trying to figure out how to incorporate animation into my own business, right? And so I'm looking at different animation softwares, and naturally, Rued does a lot of animation tutorials using a software called Beyond. And so I tried this out, and I realized that there was a little bit of a learning curve. It's a way easier thing than maybe that you might have for like Adobe products or other types of animators, but there's still some stuff that I needed to learn, some basic core stuff. And he has a whole online course where it's called Beyond, where he helps people learn these things. So we're going to be talking about kind of his process from, how he got into marketing, how he transitioned to having an agency, to then how he's now doing, he's a solopreneur. He has his own courses. He's creating content for a living. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not using any paid advertising, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm all with you on that one. I'll try to do it without any stressful campaigns running and me losing money while I sleep. I'd rather have it the other way around.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's like, let's focus on making this organic type of content. Now, I want to talk about your journey, and I want to unpack a video that I'm going to leave in the show notes and description box that you did called I Sold Information for $100,000. And this is an incredible video. It's a little bit longer. It's not a tutorial, but it kind of talks about your overall journey. And I'm hoping that maybe we can give somebody, the listeners and watchers, just the cliff notes from that, because I think you talk about a lot of really interesting points on how you first got into this and then how you got to be creating content and courses today. So would you mind kind of like summarizing a little bit of that type of content, the video?
Yeah. And that title is just so clickbaity, right? I sold information for $100,000. It's true though, but I wanted to make the video in that style of Mr. Beast and all these very high energy, high paced videos, and I wanted to make people click it because that's what you do when you watch or you see those titles, but then actually get something different than what you thought you'd get. So what I do in the video is that I begin with this very aggressive yelling intro. I sold information for $100,000, and then I try to take a step back and kind of promote a different way of selling courses, of making money online, of building your business than that very get rich quick passive income kind of trend that I am kind of a part of and I've been influenced by, but that I now try to step away from and promote a different way to do things that is more, slow and steady wins the race. That's one of my mantras right now. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So I tell the story of how I went from starting my own freelance business, creating animation videos, then creating an agency out of that, hiring people to do the animations for me. So I was the sales guy instead of the actual animator. Then at some point, after a couple of years, I grew tired of that. And I got one job at one startup as the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer. And then after a year, I got another job at another scale up as the head of product. And you live and you learn. And I learned that I'm more of a entrepreneur than an employee. So I went back to having my own company, but this time not selling my time. Instead, I wanted to sell products. So instead of freelancing for money, you give me money, I give you a video. That model was kind of not interesting to me anymore. I wanted to do something different, and I had these rules for myself. Now I wanted to create courses, sell digital products, do things that scale, and keep my setup as simple as possible. The whole solopreneurship mindset. I read the book by Paul Jarvis called
Company of
Company of
one.
One. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great. And I was super inspired by the whole idea of staying small and not having growth as your main um, goal actually for your business, which is usually is. The goal was to live an independent life, be my own boss, do things that energize me, spend time with friends and family, stay healthy, stay happy, be helpful, right? All these things that are also part of creating a big venture with venture capital and millions of dollars in revenue. That's also it. But I had seen how that worked, and I wanted to do something different. So that video that you talk about is kind of my perspective on that whole journey. And yeah, that's it.
So I love I'm in many ways I'm a few steps behind you, but I completely share the mindset that you have when it comes to, okay, I want to make this as simple as possible. I don't want to have to take on a whole bunch of employees. I don't want to focus on scaling, right? I want to be able to focus on what's the way I can do the work that I love and make a living and have equity of my time, right? Be able to spend time how I want it. Currently I'm the director of marketing at a really large behavioral health treatment mental health treatment company that serves teens and young adults, and it's a great company. I love it, but the thing about it is that it is this hustle culture that is really about growing the next center, expanding, getting more people. How can we do more? How can we do more? How can we do more? And, as I get farther along in my career, I'm like, yo, that's not actually what I want to do. I actually just like creating. I actually like teaching. My master's is in teaching. I love being able to explain information in an interesting way or be able to help somebody learn something new. And so one of the things that stuck out to me is that you kind of made this transition. It was almost like this back and forth. You have an agency, you go work for a company. What was the thing that allowed you to really make the switch when it came to saying, okay, now I'm just going to work for myself. I'm not going to work for another company. What was the way that you actually made that transition?
That's a really good question. And there are a lot of different takes on what the right model is. What is the right timing of going from side hustle to full time job, or yeah, making that transition? And my transition was long and seamless in a way. It was very slow. So I started my first real blog in 2014. So that's almost, what is it, 10 years ago almost, right?
It was a fashion blog, right? Like about tall folks, like, cause you're a tall guy. How do you
Yeah,
like actually shop for clothing as somebody who's tall? Is that right?
that's right. Yeah, I'm 6'8". So I wanted to create a blog as kind of a sandbox project where I could put into practice the stuff that I learned in my student job. I learned about SEO, search engine optimization, and I wanted to create a blog using all the things that I learned there from my great boss. Um, so yeah, that was the first thing, and I monetized it from day one because I wanted to have that as a motivation. Even though it just made $1, $2, right? That was still cool to make money on the internet instead of building your audience and then one day you monetize. I wanted to flip that and monetize from day one. So that was my first project, my first little side gig, and I did a couple while having a full time job during my studies. First of all, having a full-time study and then having my part-time job and then doing these side projects on top of that. And I actually just kept the blog going. I still have it today. I still pay for the domain and I still keep it open and make sure that the plugins are updated and all that stuff. um, so over time, over the years, this revenue that I got on the side grew very slowly, but linearly. So a little every time I put on a new or put out a new blog post or created something on Instagram or on YouTube, all these things that I learned from and had fun with, I also saw the revenue climb slowly. And after I don't know what, 6 7 years, I found myself super tired of the job that I had as a in one of these scale ups, and I looked at my revenue, and I almost hit $1,000 per month, which is not enough to live and to have a good life here in Copenhagen. It's expensive to live here, right? But it was enough. I looked at the kind of the analytics for the previous years, and I didn't go like this up and down, up and down. It was very slowly, steadily, linearly growing. So I kind of trusted the trajectory, and I thought, okay, I have $1,000 a month. That is enough to cover my rent and also maybe a little bit of food, and I had saved enough money from that year working full time that I could spend another year without paying myself. Having that kind of steady bottom layer of revenue from the blog and my YouTube, my courses, my video courses, and then also saving up. So as you can hear, I'm not just all for burn the boats and just leap off the cliff and see what happens. I saved up and I built a side hustle that I believed in, and I thought, okay, if I put full time into this little thing that I've only worked on nights and weekends, it has to explode, right? If I can allocate 5 10 times as much time into this thing, it'll grow 5 10 times as quickly. I was wrong about that, but that was the that was the thought I had when I quit my job.
So let's dive in a little bit. There's a few key points that I think are worth saying. Like one is a gradual process, right? So the people out there who are saying, I just need to quit my job and go for it. Maybe that's not the best thing. And the other thing is that you were using data to kind of inform a lot of your decisions. You were looking at your revenue, you were looking at your performance of the content that you were creating. You're saying, okay, like based upon what I see, it makes logical sense that I can go into this and expect a similar result. But as you mentioned, hey, like more time actually didn't equal more revenue, right? So maybe unpack that a little bit. Like, what are you learning from that experience? What is the reasoning behind that?
I think still to this day, it's very hard to predict the performance of my new content. So even though you can create 10 times as many blog posts, it might be that first few lists or guides for tall men's jackets or jeans for tall men. Those are the core content pieces that drive all the traffic, all the revenue. And even though you have a lot of time on your hands now, you try all kinds of different things. I try to hire freelance copywriters to really scale the number of posts and scale myself and build a whole content creation team. But that didn't really, it grew the traffic, but it didn't grow the revenue. So I think you have to be and I still haven't figured this out. It's easy to sound like an expert, but I'm still also on my journey, right? Learning every day. And I think what I'm learning is that you have to experiment a lot and see what sticks, throw a lot of stuff on the wall, see what sticks. And it's very hard to scale that process. You just have to love the process. Um, and keep doing it every week. Create a video every week, create a blog post every week, and whenever something gains a little bit of traction out of the ordinary, try to see what was different about that piece. Did you create a long post? Did you create a funnier video? Did you use animation? What was it about the thumbnail, the title? Did you share it with a friend who shared it with a friend? See if you can kind of sift out what worked, and then you'll probably end out with a conclusion that will change every month also, right? So I don't have any blueprint for how to create this content, but what I recommend is that you really, really love the process and you do it because you think it's fun. And then, you just have to accept that it takes the time it takes and prepare for that traction, right? You cannot really force it. I think maybe you can. I can't. Well, it's not my experience that you can actually just dial up the notch to 11, and then the whole thing just takes off. So it's been very organic growth from me, even though I have full time now to
Mm.
do it.
Yeah, one of the things that this reminds me of is the concept of when we set benchmarks for ourselves and those things don't end up, we actually become more sad or disheartened, right? So there was this study that was done about prisoners of war, right? And so when they were in these camps or when they were being held prisoner, they would often look at benchmarks like, oh, we'll be out by Christmas, we'll be out by Thanksgiving, we'll be out by Halloween, whatever it was, the new year. And so they would hold out hope for when that time came. And then when that time would come and pass, they would become even more sick. Their chance of disease or injury became higher, right? Their overall stress and mentality were lowered, right? And so,
Is it
or
Man's
their
Search
stress.
for Meaning? Is that the book?
So that's like the Viktor Frankl, yeah, like that's part of it. I think this was like this was actually like a general. So he was
Okay.
I don't want to say it was Stockholm. It's like the guy whose Stockholm syndrome was based off of, but
Okay.
there's some
But the same
connection with the
idea, kind of.
military. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, like when you as a creator, you say, okay, I'm going to give myself 6 months to be able to like fully monetize and go independent, and then that doesn't come, it's easy to become frustrated. It's easy to become sad, right? So instead, like being able to say, like, I don't know how long that and this is going to take, and that's what the study was saying is that the people who took it day by day, the people who enjoyed the process, the practice, the people who were in it because they were taking it, all the hardships and troubles each day and trying to be able to find some sort of positive in it. Those are the people who ended up surviving. Those are the people who made it out, right? And so, though this is a different circumstance, right? Like we are not, it's not like apples and oranges. We cannot compare these two types of things. I think that the premise remains that you cannot come into this with a fixed mindset of when you will monetize, when you will become successful, when you will be have arrived. That it's a journey and it's going to be different for everybody. But one of the things you mentioned is kind of experimenting, right? Like one of the things I see within your content is you'll kind of do a little bit of everything, right? Like you'll talk about chat GPT, you'll, you'll talk about like a course you're learning, and it's almost like just kind of an inside look into the stuff that you're actually thinking about doing, right? Rather than just like getting narrowed down into one niche about beyond or animation. Um, so like I guess the next question that I wanted to talk to you about is, you had your start with SEO and you've kind of mentioned this, you were blogging, but I know that most of the content, at least that I see from you, is via YouTube, right? So are you still blogging? Are you still like how's that process going for you?
No, not really. I enjoy the video creation much more than the blogging. So I repurpose my video content into blog posts. So I try to use the script, for example, that I've already written for the video, post that as a blog post on my website, and embed the video, right? But I don't write as such. I write a monthly newsletter to my community members, but that's really all the text that I do, besides LinkedIn posts and stuff. But it is video. Yeah.
So let's switch gears. Let's talk about this course creation thing. This is especially selfishly important to me because I'm creating an SEO course now and using the stuff that I learned through working in the behavioral health industry to kind of share that with other folks. But when it comes to creating a course, like let's talk about the timeline. Let's talk about like the journey with that. At what point did you know you were going to create a course, and from that ideation point to be able to like actually execute it and get your first customer, what was that process like for you?
Very random and chaotic. Again, it's been very different from course to course. The core course that has allowed me to do what I do, and experiment along the way. There's always been one course that fuels the whole setup, and that is Go Beyond Beyond, as you also mentioned. And that course I created with my animator during the agency days, during these 2 months of summer holiday, where we had no customers, nothing in the book, right? We didn't know how to cover our salaries, how to keep the store open. So we thought, okay, what can we spend our time on? Let's create a course for all those who think we are too expensive, who they want to do it themselves, right? Um, and in order to do it themselves, they have to learn a little bit about script writing, voiceover work, and animation. So My friend, an animator, he was a former teacher, a classroom teacher. So he outlined the course in a day or two, and we shot it on an iPhone in this co-working space that we worked out of. We shot it. Yeah, it took a couple of days, and he clipped the whole thing, edited the whole thing in 1 or 2 weeks, and he did all the voiceover, all the kind of speech on top of the screen recordings, and then I did it at home, like with my voice to be the center of the thing. But it's really, I mean, 90% of that course is made by him. I just changed the voiceover. So that was a very random process, and that course did really well. We put it on Udemy and Skillshare just to get some eyeballs on it, get some feedback on it, and see what was good and bad. Is the pace too quick or slow? Is the level of information too simple or detailed? My style of being, happy and trying to be fun and making jokes, is that good? Using so much animation, does that distract or does it add to the course? We got a lot of 1-star reviews, 5-star reviews with a lot of comments attached, and learned a lot from that. So the next time I created the course, it was a completely different process. It took 3 months. I animated the whole thing. Every second of every lesson is animated. Strong scripts is what it's called. And that was just a reaction to all the frustration around script writing. So people think it's all about Beyond. They think it's all about the animation. So, okay, now I can just pay a monthly fee to Beyond and I get a tool, and then I can just create animation videos, right? That's like going down to the hardware store, buying a hammer, and then starting to build a house. That's not really how it works. You have to have a lot of foundational knowledge in order to structure your video the right way. And I had heard that feedback, that frustration from so many Go Beyond students. And then I created a course to answer that frustration. So that was just a very, very simple process of listening to feedback and answering that feedback with a course, right?
Mm.
So two very different processes. I can go into more detail about the actual production of the course if you want to, but yeah, I don't have a blueprint as such. Yeah.
Let's talk about one of the things that you said is that, hey, when I'm creating a video, when I'm creating this course, that I'm looking to see what does well, and I'm looking for the feedback that people are giving. Like, you created strong scripts off of the feedback that people were giving you on this course. So, what are some general best practices that you've seen when it comes to video creation, content creation, that at least have worked for your business? Maybe it's general patterns that you've recognized that have made some videos or some courses or modules in a course more effective than others.
I think I try to counter the old style of e-learning as hard as I could. I was so frustrated with the courses I had taken, and also very frustrated with the way that I had been taught in university. The materials you get, the self-paced programs I had taken, it's so dry, it's so boring. The corporate training I have gone through is just, it kills you from the inside out, right? Why does it have to be like that when YouTube is so fun, so entertaining, so well produced? Why is B2B versus B2C, business to consumer, like, why does it have to be boring just because it's business, right? So I really wanted to counter that and say this is for small freelancers, it's for the e-learning instructional designers, e-learning developers in small and medium-sized companies. I'm sure they would appreciate humor, fun, high production value, personality. Um, so I try to really instill that into my courses and make it fun and try to make it as entertaining as the stuff you see on YouTube, right? So I really try to have that YouTube mindset in creating my courses, and I think that's quite different. It's coming more and more now. I see a better and better production, much better e-learning out there than say 5, 7, 10 years ago. But yeah, I really try to what do you say, fly that flag of creating engaging e-learning. It's such a kind of buzz phrase, but it's harder to do than to say.
So I think let's unpack that a little bit because, one of the things that you talk about, like in your mission statement, is like everybody needs to have the ambition to entertain. And, when I was a classroom teacher for middle school and high school students, I immediately recognize that, right? If you're teaching something like grammar, if you're teaching something like even creative writing, even things that are supposed to be fun, if you do not approach it from a mindset of like, how can we make this entertaining? They called it edutainment, right? Then the students were never going to really engage with it. There had to be some element of play in there. And I completely agree with you. If you go onto Udemy, if you go into all these other course things, you'll see people who are doing a voiceover over a PowerPoint. And that's it, man. They're just like, they're kind of going through it. And people are paying money for it, maybe not paying a lot of money for it, but they're paying money for these things, right? So, like, when it comes to arbitrage or how can you get a disproportionate return on your investment, it may sound really simple, but one of the best ways is actually creating a better course. What are these people doing well? What could be better? And as you pointed out, so much of the content out there is very dry. They're afraid to put themselves out there. They're afraid to crack jokes. They're afraid to reveal their personality because, that's vulnerability. That's actually being a human being. That's people being turned off by you because if you're going in any direction, you're also going in the opposite direction, right? So when you think about edutainment or being entertaining, are there any characteristics that you think are really helpful to incorporate within the content that you're creating to be able to make people have a good time?
A very low practical thing that I did was to layer animations on top of my screen recordings, because screen recording is pretty dry to watch, right? It's a screen, you know how it looks. There's a small cursor moving around. It's good for software training. It's necessary, but what can you do to spice it up a little? And I tried to not really crack jokes in the voiceover. I hadn't written fun into the script of my lessons, but what I did as an afterthought was every time there is something that can be interpreted in different ways. Like if I use an expression like here, it's important to cook your brand into the animation style or something. If you use that expression, cooking something into something else, then I would throw in a cooker steaming hot water or whatever, right? It may sound simple, but every time you could add a visual animated side to a sentence I said, I would do it. And that would just create just a little bit of extra something to look at, and maybe something to maybe make it slightly more memorable. Um, I think the thing is, I've also gotten negative feedback on this, that the animations were distracting. So that's what you think if you are in a huge corporation and you get feedback like this. It's like a snail where you touch the eyes, right? They retract immediately. If you get one finger on your content because you took a chance, you took risk, you withdraw, and it's all just black and white whiteboards, super dry again, slideshows, right? But I think it's the biggest risk is no risk, right? If you don't risk anything with your content, if you don't put yourself out there, as you say, if you don't try to throw those animations on top of those slides or screen recordings, well, it's going to be just another one of those, right? And it's just you're going to drown in the flood of content. It was this particular scene where I talk about the disconnect between Vyond's sound effects and their visual effects. So I would think when you create a feature like that, if there is a pop effect, you create a pop sound and then you can match the two and then it makes sense, right? But it was like ambient campfire. Like you don't have any animations for that, right? So I made the joke that it must have been a blind person who did this feature, and then I would show an animated blind character, and someone got super offended about that. You can't make fun of disabled people, but that's a risk to take. It's an ambition to entertain. I try to be fun, and 99% of the people thought it was fun. 1% hated it, and that's fine.
Yeah. I think so. There's a company newsletter that we do within the company where they were doing these things where it was an hour and it was somebody going through a PowerPoint. It was the CEO and they're like talking about points of this thing. and not everybody could see it, and it was kind of boring and it lasted forever, right? And so we said, okay, what if we turned this meeting into a 5 minute video, just 5 minutes of company updates every single month, right?
Yeah.
And we did our best to be able to make it engaging and funny, right? So whether that's at one point I used Descript to be able to like reorder the words that somebody was saying to say some complete nonsense that's like completely outside of their character. We're using B-roll, we're using GIFs, we're using sound effects. And at the end of the day, what we noticed is that yes, some people did not like it, right? And then the other hand, we had way more like actual viewer and attentionship on the actual things that people needed to know, right? So it is a risk reward thing. But I think, to emphasize your point, the biggest risk is actually being like lukewarm, is actually not stirring anyone's emotions either way, right? Being
Mm.
ambivalent. And if like the thing that turns me off, if I'm getting feedback from content and everybody's saying that it's good, that is a like key sign to me that I'm doing something wrong. I know that might
Mm.
sound counterintuitive, but if I'm
Yeah.
not ruffling anybody's feathers, like if nobody's having some sort of adverse reaction, then
An
I'm actually
opinion.
not standing for anything, right? I'm actually
Yeah.
not making anything that's actually going to be helpful. You have to
Yeah.
be willing to piss some people off or to say no to other people in order to actually find that niche or the people who you really want to connect with.
I heard someone say something like vanilla is no one's favorite ice cream,
Mm,
right?
right.
And you want to be someone's favorite ice cream, and then you have to choose a taste, and some will hate it, and some will absolutely love it, and that's the that's the direction you want to go in. You don't want to be vanilla ice cream.
So, for someone like myself, or maybe a listener or watcher who's thinking, like, all right, like this guy, he's kind of done it. You talked about, hey, I've arrived, right? In that video that we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, like you're actually able to make a living as a full time content creator, right? You're still learning, you're still experimenting, you're still growing. But if you were to give somebody some advice and you're saying, okay, right, like you're going to start your journey of maybe creating a course or making a living through content, right? Whether it's blog posts or videos or SEO, whatever it is, what would be like some general guidelines that you would want them to know right out the gate to be able to set them up for success?
I think SEO is a really good basic skill set to understand or just dive a little bit into, because when you start out, you have zero subscribers. Maybe you have one or two subscribers, your brother and your mother. But if you go in all kinds of directions and just vlog from your vacation and you film yourself when you're cooking and you just want to be this influencer kind of thing, it's just going to drown in this whole sea of content. So understanding SEO means that you combine what you care about, what's interesting to you, what you're an expert at. I'm tall. I was struggling with tall people's clothing. Then I combine that interest with this knowledge about search, traffic, terms, topics, topic research, and I try to find that place where I could put some content online, create these guides about tall men's jackets, tall men's sweatpants, whatever, and then carve out my tiny space of the internet and be the very best in that space. It's very general advice. Everybody talks about finding the niche or their niche, but there's a counter reaction to that now, and I think it's important to focus and start with a kind of a search based, performance based mindset when you create stuff. And it might sound, well, that's anti creative. It's not the way I want to be a creator. But I think you will your kind of source of energy will dry out if you don't see any traction within the first 1, 2, 3 years. If you just keep trying and everything just dries out like a drop of water in the desert, right? You'd rather just focus on something. And for me, it was tall people's clothing. It's not the most interesting topic in the world, but it was an interest, an expertise kind of, compared with actual demand that I could see on Google. People are searching for this. If I create the very best piece of content about this, they will find it. They will see it, they will like it, they will spend their time on that page. Google will like that, it will rank higher, and so the whole flywheel starts turning, right? So I think it's still what I do today. Actually, I'm only at 15,000 subscribers now on YouTube, so I don't have enough fans to just talk about whatever and I will get a million views. I'm not there yet. I have to be very conscious about how I position my content, and I use that basic knowledge about search to figure out where are the content gaps that I can fill.
Yeah, one of the things, and you're kind of talking about it, at least initially, from a blogging perspective, right? And I think one of the biggest things to think about is, what is the domain authority of your website, right? That number that, is connected with how many backlinks you have, right? If you have a domain authority of 15 and you see that there's a high amount of search for a general term, but you need to have a domain authority of like 90 to be able to like enter into that race, then you could create an amazing blog post. It could be actually really well done. It could have semantically related keywords. It could have visuals that are engaging. It could have original research. It could have a video at the top. It could be on a third grade reading level, so it's accessible. It could use the keywords in the header and in the title tag and on all the places that are like needed to be able to make it rank. But if you don't have the domain authority to be able to like actually enter into that competition, then it does not matter, right? So like I think one of the other things is thinking about, okay, like I'm willing to sacrifice some search volume for something that I can actually come up as a top result for, right?
Mm.
Maybe this general term has a lot of search, but I have no chance of ranking for it yet until I can build up an audience. I'm kind of curious about how you think about that when it comes to YouTube, right? So I know YouTube, there's plenty of things. There's vidIQ, there's TubeBuddy, where we can type in a video title to be able to see. We can add keywords within the description. We can do hashtags and stuff. But when it comes to being able to think about like your YouTube video versus the other competition out there, is there any way that you think about choosing a video topic in regards to the other competition that YouTube already has?
Yes and no. It's never black and white, and my approach is a mix between the analytical approach versus the I do whatever I want to do approach. And I'm a big promoter of choosing the style that fits you the best. I'm not super analytical, so when I dive into this TubeBuddy tool and vidIQ and all that stuff, I get pretty depressed because I can't rank for anything. It just keeps telling me that these other guys are, well, the competition is high, the search volume for what you care about is low, all those things. So I can spend a whole day in these analytics tools and not output anything, and just be depressed and say, okay, maybe I should just quit this whole thing and get a job, right? That's what it does to me. But if you love data and you can find those gaps via those tools, do it. I try to do the least amount of research that gives me some kind of initial confidence that there is traffic for this. That might be the simple metric. Is there enough traffic for this? Then I don't really care about the competition. If I think I know something about this, I can create an interesting video. I care about this topic. I want to do a video, even though if it only gets 300 views, that's fine. I mean, the video you talked about, I made $100,000 video. It has 500 views or something, but those views are people who've watched my other content, gone into the channel and sifted through the whole video library, and they've watched that video and connected with me on some level. Then it's worth doing, even though it's not a banger, it's not a blockbuster video, right? I spent so much time on that video, but that's fine. I want to have it for when I'm old and I have kids and they can see how I look at 30, right? That's also something to kind of build this whole digital library of yourself through time. So there are so many other things to content than analytics and statistics and tools. And I think a lot of budding creators drown on the journey from having nothing to having something, because they think they have to understand all these tools. They think they have to have deep knowledge about SEO, for example. When I promote the SEO skill, it's just to have some basic understanding of how the internet works, how search works, how you can create, how to combine your interest with something that is in demand, and then just let go of all the tools, start building that video and put it out there. If it doesn't rank, you never get traffic on it, create another one tomorrow. Love the process instead of the goal, as we talked about earlier.
Mm. So I want to kind of talk about what's next for you. Selfishly, I'm interested. You've created some different courses. It seems like you're kind of branching out from just talking about animation to talking about explainers, right? And being able to, like, how do you teach online? How do you create content and teach things online? What's next for you?
It is to branch out a little bit. I've been the Beyond guy for a couple of years now and made that my foundation. And I'm still going to revolve around that tool and around animation and explainer videos. But I'm going to go up in the helicopter a little bit and talk a little more general about teaching online, how to convert your knowledge into video. I want to help other educators digitize their knowledge. A lot of classic, either classroom teachers or consultants, know a lot of things about something very specific. And if they don't convert that, like pull it out of their heads and put it on the internet, it'll get lost when they die, to put it very simply, right? So that's kind of my mission, to help people who might also be a little older than me, 40, 50, 60 years old. They are super knowledgeable. They have to understand a couple of things in order to write a script, record a voiceover, create a visual site with a camera, with animations, with screen recordings, whatever they need to piece that content together and put it online as a course, as a YouTube video, as whatever, right? So that's how I zoom out a little bit. I don't only talk about the tool. I talk about the complete three-step process, and I talk about the tools that can inform that process, and also kind of as we've talked about today, my experiences with doing that myself and sharing those pointers.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to leave links to your website and to your courses in the show notes of the description box. So make sure that you check that out, because I've personally taken it. I can tell you that it has helped me. I've used the things that I've learned, especially around beyond animation, and even some things about script writing and just like framing how I'm going to present the content. And it was very helpful. So I'm going to make sure I link that in the description box and show notes below. I want to move on to the last section of the show, which is content marketing detention, right? So as a teacher, as a student, I was often in detention in school. And as a teacher, I was often doing the behavior management that comes along with wrangling a bunch of middle school or high schoolers. But what are some things that you're seeing in marketing today or within content today that just need to go and spend some time and think about what they did, right? They need detention, that need to be put in the back burner, that you want to stop seeing so much of?
I finally got what it meant, like in your last sentence, content marketing detention. That's a good term. I think everyone who leads with negativity, it's very generic, but I see it all the time on LinkedIn. I follow all these gurus. They have hundreds of thousands of people following them. People who are so, um, I believe there is like a pyramid, and the bottom third are people who are employed somewhere. They want to break out of that. They want to create a little bit of a thing for themselves. Part-time YouTubers create their first course. And they're so fragile in that phase, because if they hit something hard or they get discouraged, they'll just drop the whole thing and stay employed forever, right? Even though they don't want to. It's fine to be employed, but if you don't want to, it's not cool. So I think everyone that tries to make people feel bad, like you're being exploited at work, like some of the biggest ones are kind of making people feel like shit, to put it as it is, right? And I think that's a wrong direction to go. I know that there are all these studies that negativity is so much more powerful than positivity and good news. No one want to read the good news. We care about chaos and conflict. But I think, like Michael Jackson says, right? The man in the mirror. Start with yourself. Be the change you want to see in the world, right? So I think all the negative people who try to kind of promote their own things by making people feel insufficient or like they are lacking something. I've been guilty of this myself, and I mean, it's also part of that video that I've looked at some of the trends that I've followed. I've tried to adopt that to my own content, and I look at that content and I just hate myself for creating that stuff, putting that kind of negativity and blame and you know all that stuff into the world. So I think lead with positivity, even though it doesn't rank or blow up.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. It's like the difference between having empathy and then being an asshole, right? Like, on the one hand, identifying the physical, emotional, and philosophical problem that your ideal customer is going through can help you to be positioned as somebody who gets where they're coming from, right?
Mm.
Like, hey, you don't have the time to be able to make videos, right? Or to learn a new animation software. And this might make you feel frustrated because you want to use animation to like represent your business. You believe that there should be a simple way to learn animation, right? That's like the problem thing. And when you do position the problem first, then your solution is more valuable, right? But on the other hand, when you go deeper into the emotional problem, like you're no good at creating content, and you know
Yeah,
that
yeah. Seven
everybody
reasons
thinks you're
why your course sucks, right?
right. Like
That's just
that's a negative mindset, and it doesn't make people feel like you get them, and it really just kind of like ruins their self-confidence. So I totally agree with you. Building people up, like the whole reason that we're doing this is that we want to be able to make the world a little better of a place. Like people have stuff that they want to share, we want to help them share that stuff with the world, right? We want to help people teach other people. That's an important thing in life, right? That's the way we've survived as humans for thousands of years. So like there's an art to that, and in the process, hey, don't be an asshole. All right, so being an asshole instead of having empathy, go sit in detention, think about what you did, because nobody wants to see that anymore.
But it's also
um
the whole perfectionist trend that everything is so glossy and perfect online. So everyone who
mm,
sits there and they're not making $100,000 from the content, that's also the pun or the joke that I made in that video. It's so easy to look back on what you did and claim some kind of golden process that you had. You had a template. I see. I'm not gonna mention his name, but it's one of the most popular LinkedIn influencers. Every time he has success with some post or something, he reverse engineers that into a blueprint, and maybe the intention is good, but it makes everyone feel like they have to follow a blueprint in order to have success. But the
mm,
truth is, he had success, and then he kind of molded that into uh, what was the structure of that success. Not because you have to follow that structure to find success, um, but that's how it makes you feel like, okay, so now I have to find or use his course and his templates in order to do stuff. And I think it just inhibits you as a budding creator. You want to do your thing, you have your own energy around a topic. Now you have to go down this road because he said that you have to, right?
mm. I love that you mentioned that. One of the things I really appreciate about you as a creator is that like owning yourself in the process, not presenting yourself as somebody who's just arrived and who has it all figured out, but really being honest about like where you're at, where you're going, your goals, your struggles, the things that are working. I think that vulnerability is so relatable to people. And I think it's really helpful to let people connect with you and to not think of like you as somebody who's completely out of touch with the rest of humanity. So I
Yeah,
really want to applaud you and appreciate that you've weaved that throughout your content, because I think
thanks.
it has a much more positive impact. Rude, where can people go to learn more about you and all the awesome work that you do?
Well, on YouTube, I'm Rued Riis on YouTube, and my website is ruedriis.com. Those are my online homes, and that's where I put everything I do. So that will be it.
Just curious, what's the name of the fashion blogging, men's fashion for tall guys website?
It's Tolsome.
Tallsome. Okay,
Yeah,
awesome. Okay, I was always wondering that because you I don't think I've heard you mention it, but that's cool. Okay, listeners, watchers,
I
I'm gonna
try to
put
keep it a secret, but now it's out there.
it's out there for the world now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna link up to all those things. Ruth, thank you so much for being on the show. It was really, really awesome to be able to finally talk with you virtual face to face after being such a consumer of your content, being helped so much by your content. So I really appreciate it.
That's great to hear. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
All right, guys, you can find all that stuff in the show notes description box below. Reach out to me if you have any questions. And until next time, we will see you on the next episode. Class dismissed.